2024 has just begun and I'm already learning so much more about myself, about life. And the first lesson was that even in the very worst situations, you can still find something good. So thank you, Final Fantasy XVI. You might be an absolute travesty that deserves to be thrown into the pits of hell, but you royally screwed up in so many regards that you gave me ideas for enough videos to fill my schedule for at least a couple of months. We could call this Everything Wrong with AAA Games, featuring Final Fantasy XVI. Now get out of my sight, you filth. We'll see each other at the end of the year. Trust me. So where do we start then? How about side quests? Unbearable, boring, dull side quests. But what are side quests? A side quest is any kind of optional mission that diverges from the main path of the game. Thank you, ChatGPT.
You're welcome.
It's a giant pause button that puts a stop to the story with the same kindness a man from the 20s would teach his kid to behave.
You're gonna be fine, baby doll.
They're usually the whole reason why an open world is, well, an open world. After all, a big map devoid of any kind of side activity is typically useless and boring. A little tidbit of knowledge Mafia 2 didn't get back in the day. But with open world games being arguably the most popular type of games nowadays, how come that such a pivotal element like side quests end up sucking harder than an altar boy in a rural village? On the contrary, they seem also committed to sucking that in a one every decade event, the gaming community has unanimously agreed upon calling this atrocity the Ubisoft formula.
Oui, baguette.
Make a map as big as your tiny graphics card can handle, not necessarily an artistically inspired one mind you, and then tactical strike it with as many icons as humanly possible, and every single one of them will drive you to the same 3 or 4 tasks over and over again. Can we fix this? And where do we start fixing it? Well, we have to take about 50 steps back here, because the main issue with side quests are not the side quests themselves, it's the core gameplay of the game. We look at the gameplay and typically categorize it in good gameplay and bad gameplay, and if the game in question somehow falls in the first category, we might assume that adding side quests to it would make sense. After all, if the game is fun, more game equals more fun, right? Wrong. There's a reason if a game like Devil May Cry 5 isn't too long. The combat is excellent and spectacular, but it's also a game that lives and dies by how much new stuff is added every 30 minutes. New weapons, new enemies, new difficulties. But if you try to stretch this for 30 or god forbid 40 hours, right Final Fantasy XVI, you hit a point where the development budget skyrockets because you now need to add more optional stages, more optional weapons and more enemies, or you make the player unlock new moves and tools every 3 hours instead of every 30 minutes. That's why a game that wants to add side quests needs, first and foremost, a BBC. Big, beefy core gameplay. There needs to be enough variety in the gameplay if you want it to still be fun and fresh, even if you try to complete all the side quests. You take the last Hitman trilogy and the big maps that allow for different approaches make executing optional missions engaging, while a stinking piece of crap like Far Cry 5 runs out of fuel after 5 hours, after which you're stuck repeating the same stuff over and 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 over. But Far Cry 5 sucks. What about a good game instead? What if we added side quests to Shadow of the Colossus? It would be even worse, because that game has a bare-bone combat system and besides that there's just horse riding, so unless you add a racing minigame you've got little to work with. Alright, great, you made a BBC, and you're gonna cram it into that side quest now, right? Wrong again. It's too big and beefy. It's virtually impossible to stuff it all inside a single contained and short mission. What you need now is a BJ, ball juggle. You have all these elements you're trying to balance on your hands and now you have to pick only 1 or 2 of them for every given side quest. But what stuff works in brief bursts? Is it chasing weird colors for 5 minutes? If you ask CD Projekt Red, they'll probably tell you yes, but really that thing's only comes second in my scale of boredom after an Amy Schumer Netflix special.
But I want to put my penis right in your butthole.
So how do you make the optimal choice? And the answer is, you don't. Every player will approach your game in a different way and with different taste. It's impossible to give everyone what they want without creating an over-bloated mess blander than your mom's cooking. Fallout New Vegas realized that its core strength is dialogue and choice, and that was ultimately the core of most of its side quests. Metal Gear Solid 5 understood that attacking the same outpost with different crazy shit at every iteration was its main appeal. Mass Effect 2 sometimes has you fighting through hordes of enemies because the combat was pretty good, but sometimes you only talk for 8 minutes because people people also love the role-playing element. Killing your babies is not just an interesting and bold piece of advice in life, it's also a common sentence in game design. You need to know which ideas you have to kill and which ones will survive, and in the case of side quests, only a few can pass through the gate at every given time. But all this was just the setup. We've got our BBC and our BJ, now we need a happy ending. What? It's got nothing to do with side quests, I just thought you deserve one for sitting through this so far. Nah, the last item in our trident of perfection is the pole. Also known as why the hell should I care about your lost carriage of cheese when I'm trying to save the world from today's variation of evil god hell-bent on enslaving babies to make Kit Kats. This is where everything comes together. The fun gameplay to make the experience engaging, the writing create a compelling narrative, and good level design that makes reaching the objective intuitive, which is pretty much the exact opposite of flooding my HUD with enough quest markers to induce an epileptic attack. I'm playing a video game FF16, not a Where's Waldo with yellow exclamation points. So now that the player has taken the bait, you need to reel them in with rewards. But rewards can be anything really, except giving me more experience, because I can get that by killing ratatas for 1 hour. Things are different if you're offering a new weapon, or a genuinely memorable side story, or unlocking something you didn't even know existed in the game. Yes, Final Fantasy XVI, you get this one tiny little praise for your hidden chocobo. Or for the big boys out there, you can do this. Elden Ring rewards you with a whole ass new area if you follow some of its side quests, and that, my friend, is a show of confidence if I've ever seen one. This is the pinnacle of a great side quest when it's intertwined with other elements of the game, rather than just asking you to go to point A, then to point B, and then back to point A. But it's also expensive and time consuming to make, so as long as the pool is well executed, the basic structure is fine as well. Sure, it's a tiny little circle, but circles are cute and there's nothing wrong with them as long as the experience is fun and meaningful rather than methodical and repetitive. After all, games work around gameplay loops, don't they? Although in the case of Final Fantasy XVI I would call it a noose around my neck.